Well, we knew the Sacramento Kings likely weren't going to win every single game for the remainder of the season during the playoff race, but tonight's loss at home to the Minnesota Timberwolves, a very winnable game despite the Kings' lethargic defense, does sting a bit. We'll break it down right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season long. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer for ABC 10 News. Second night in a row here inside the Golden One Center. Bit of a different vibe tonight than last night, of course, on this post-game show. Kings lose to the Timberwolves 138-134. Second night of a back-to-back for the Kings. Also second night of a back-to-back for the Timberwolves. There aren't excuses, but there are realities. And at this point in the season, it's understandable for the Sacramento Kings to be a little gassed, to be a little tired. But then again, every single team plays 82 games, and the Timberwolves came into this game having played more games than the Kings to this point. Not an excuse, just something worthy of pointing out. And I asked head coach Mike Brown after the game about needing to remind this team to give a better defensive effort because the lethargic defense tonight was not good enough from the jump. And one of the things Mike Brown said in his answer to my question about having to remind this team is he talked about shortcuts that are taken at times in games. And the word that I would use is lazy, and I don't intend for that to be as harsh as it sounds, like I'm pointing fingers at guys and saying, you're lazy, you're not giving as much effort as you should, you're paid far too much money to not give 100% effort, blah, 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 blah. What I mean is, and what Coach Brown means by shortcuts, and what I mean by laziness is, the example that he gave is fighting over a screen versus going under a screen, right? It takes more energy. It takes more effort. You have to battle over a screener in order to stay in the range or in close proximity of a shooter so they don't get the space that they need or as much space as they would like to get a clean shot off. Versus going under the screen, it's easier to do, it's less physical, but it allows the shooter more room. These are shortcuts that teams take when they're over 60 games into a season, when they're on the second night of a back-to-back. And Mike said it's the teams that don't take those shortcuts and make all those little plays and give all those little efforts for as close to 48 minutes as they can. It's those teams that reach that elite status, that go to that next level. That's just something that the Sacramento Kings simply do not do at this point in time. And again, as someone who is terribly out of shape, as someone who gets winded running down the streets chasing my kid or running to the fridge during a commercial break, like it's hard for me to stand here and say, how dare the Sacramento Kings take shortcuts? They absolutely shouldn't do that. We all do that in their life or in our lives, right? But you could see the laziness. You could see the shortcuts that the Sacramento Kings tried to take tonight. You could see their lack of focus at times, especially defensively. You could see them ball watching at times instead of making the extra effort to cut off a lane to the basket or help on the weak side or try and keep Rudy Gobert off the offensive glass and stop the Timberwolves from putbacks or closing out on wide open three-point shooters. You could see the Sacramento Kings not giving as much defensive effort over the course of this game as maybe we expect them to, and as they should, being in a playoff race. But in addition to that, the Minnesota Timberwolves had a phenomenal shooting night tonight. Now, there's a difference between a team having a much better shooting night than they usually have, statistically, and a team benefiting from a defense just giving them far too many open looks. I'll get into that. The Timberwolves shot 51.3% from the three-point line tonight, 20 of 39. Now, believe it or not, the Sacramento Kings actually shot a higher three-point percentage. They made 6 less threes than the Timberwolves did, but they went 14 of 27 for 51.9% from beyond the arc. But the Timberwolves, they're an average 36% three-point shooting team. So from 36% on average to 51, nearly 52% tonight, yeah, that's a problem. That's a boost. And look, the Timberwolves weren't missing. right? They were hitting shot after shot after shot, and it wasn't just one or two guys. The entire team was feasting from beyond three-point range. But this was very different compared to when the Kings and Clippers played, not last night, but last Friday night, right? The 176-175 game. A lot of people looked at the box score. A lot of people looked at the Kings giving up 175 points and said, man, the Kings did not play any defense in this game. Neither did the Clippers. I shared that I thought it was just an excellent showcase of shot making. And the Kings were doing, I thought, a pretty decent job in that game of contesting a lot of the three-pointers that the Clippers were raining down. Remember, the Clippers were not missing from beyond the arc, whether it was Paul George or Kawhi Leonard or Nicholas Batum, whoever it was. Like, they were raining down threes on the Kings, and it didn't look like they could do anything to stop it, even though they were contesting shots. Tonight, the Minnesota Timberwolves were raining down threes on the Sacramento Kings, not missing any shots, but the majority of them were wide open, or at best, lightly contested. So there's a big difference there, right? The Minnesota Timberwolves absolutely shot better than they should. And most teams shoot in like the mid-40s when they have wide open three-point opportunities. So don't get me wrong, the Timberwolves shooting-wise, they definitely overachieved tonight. And it seems like a lot of teams come into Sacramento or come into games against the Kings and overachieve from beyond the three-point arc, right? But they also got a little bit of their swagger. They also kind of got going by the amount of wide open corner and wing threes they got. And it all started with dribble penetration. Like, the Kings were breaking down in the lanes to the basket, the driving lanes, the attacking lanes to the basket, and allowing far too many paint touches, allowing far too easy inside-out ball. Mike Brown was calling them skip passes, the amount of times that the Timberwolves could attack the paint, have a lot of movement on the perimeter, and find Mike Conley or whoever it was standing in the corner for an easy, wide-open three. And the Timberwolves were raining them down all night. The Kings continued to fall into the same trap. Their closeouts were either too late, not fast enough, or they were scrambling too much because everybody was trying to react and make up for the breakdowns that were starting initially on the perimeter with whoever was initiating the offense, putting the ball on the floor, getting into the paint, getting towards the rim, and forcing the rest of the team to kind of scramble and react and help. Mike Brown talked about how the Kings defenders stayed on the hip of their man too much instead of stepping in front of them and cutting off that lane. It was a big problem all night long for the Kings. Yes, the Timberwolves overachieved three-point shooting-wise, but the Kings fed into that by not making the adjustments that they needed to make and just hoping rather than preventing the Timberwolves hoping the Timberwolves would miss shots rather than preventing them from hitting shots. I am encouraged, though. I am encouraged by the fact that the Kings were able to keep this game close or within striking distance. Now, they were down by 17 points at one point, but the Kings did not play well tonight. For the majority of the game, the Kings did not play well. Certainly not 100% of their effort. I would say probably 70s to 80s, right? And still, they had more than their fair share of chances to win this game. I thought they were actually going to put themselves in a position to steal this game when they, in many ways, did not deserve it and trailed basically the entire night. Right, I thought they could have stolen this one at the end, and they made it close. A lot of that had to do with how they ended the third quarter, getting a little bit of a run going in the third quarter. In the final 4 minutes and 8 seconds of the third quarter, I believe, they went on a 17-6 run to cut then a 13-point Clipper lead down to 3. So good to see, or maybe it was a 14, doing the math in my head, a 14-point Clipper lead down to 3. So good to see the Sacramento Kings. They really just needed one run this entire night to get back in the game. They couldn't get that run going because they couldn't get any stops. Well, they started to get stops, and really the third quarter break going into the fourth quarter, the break between the quarters, that's kind of what killed the Kings' momentum. Had they kept going, I think the Sacramento Kings would have taken the lead and maybe built upon it with how they were playing and how they were starting to get energized, and the crowd was starting to get energized here in the Golden One Center. Once again, tied a record crowd, 18,111 in attendance here on this Saturday night in the Golden One Center. Going back to the shooting issues, though, let's look at the Kings' percentages that they give up from beyond the arc. They give up 37.9% of threes, or rather, teams are shooting 37.9% against them in the left corner three. In the right corner three, that is up to 39%. That's really their weakest spot on the floor. The Kings give up way too many right corner three-pointers, and the Minnesota Timberwolves were raining them down on the Kings tonight. Now, corner threes in general, the Kings give up 38.6%, and then above the break threes, which are the wing or straight on above the key, the Kings allow 37.5%. That's definitely not the best in the league. It's definitely not in the top of the league. It's in the bottom of the league in terms of three-point shooting percentage. So yes, a lot of teams come in and have success shooting against the Sacramento Kings. Now, a lot of people want to talk about, and we will address, the choice at the end of the game when the Kings were down by 2 points. De'Aaron Fox had just gotten fouled, hit 2 free throws to cut a 4-point lead down to 2. There were there was a gap or a difference of 4 seconds between the shot clock and the game clock. It was Timberwolves ball with 28 seconds left, and the Kings tried to, with full court press, trap the ball and force a turnover and have a chance to tie or win the game with one last possession. They also had a timeout remaining. After not trapping the ball successfully, De'Aaron Fox, with 15 seconds remaining and 9 seconds left on the shot clock, was it 9 seconds? So maybe there was a 6-second gap. Roughly, you know what I mean, around that difference of 4, 5, 6 seconds, not a major gap. De'Aaron Fox decides to foul with 15 seconds remaining. A lot of people are questioning why De'Aaron made that decision. When you had a timeout, the shot clock was in your favor, assuming the Timberwolves take a shot and miss, you can rebound the ball, timeout, advance the ball, and still have 3 or whatever seconds to draw up a play and try and hit a game winner or tie the game once again. The Kings elected to foul in that moment. T-Wolves stepped to the line, hit both free throws. The Kings never used their timeout. De'Aaron Fox comes back to the other end of the floor, looks for a big three, step back three. He misses it. T-Wolves run out the clock. Game is over. I personally agree with those of you who don't like the foul there. There's a good argument to be made for both sides. I think the fact that you have the timeout in your back pocket, you use it there. You trust your defense, even though your defense has been terrible the entire night. You trust your defense to be able to get that stop. Don't stop the clock. Don't give them free throws. Let them shoot or let them try and get that big bucket. You have that timeout in your back pocket. The only thing you really can't give up in that scenario is an offensive rebound. Well, Mike Brown, of course, after the game, was asked about the decision to foul and whether or not that was a mistake. Here's what he had to say.
No, that wasn't a mistake. We told them we're going to take 2 or 3 traps and then go ahead and foul. It was one of those things where they were shooting 60% from the field, and so I you kind of hate to say this, but we weren't stopping anybody tonight. And so at the end of the day, let's try to go for a steal. Let's see if they can win at the free throw line if we don't get a steal, because there's still a lot of time on the clock. And then just kind of go from there. But we did debate that, though, because 4 seconds is a decent amount. But there wasn't much confidence shown by our team to say, okay, we're going to rely on our defense to get a stop.
Whether you take this as a silver lining or not, I will say this: the Kings split this weekend doubleheader here in Sacramento. Out of the 2 games, in my opinion, getting the Clipper game was better than getting the Timberwolves game, just because I think the Clippers, if they can figure it out based off the talent that they have, they're more of a threat to close the gap with the Sacramento Kings. Plus, had the Kings, like I mentioned yesterday, had they lost that game, that would have affected their tiebreaker with the Phoenix Suns. Tonight's game, because the Timberwolves are not a divisional opponent, did not have that same effect on the Kings-Suns tiebreaker. So the Kings get away with the better win and better loss in this doubleheader. That being said, of course, there still is plenty of disappointment. This still feels like one that got away from the Sacramento Kings, a win that in a lot of ways they should have had. We know the Sacramento Kings are a better team. We wish they would have played like it tonight. The streak is snapped, right? That 5-game win streak is snapped. The Kings and the Bucks both lost tonight, so there's no longer any perfect team since the All-Star break remaining. Disappointing, but the Kings can afford it, right? As long as they don't allow it to snowball from here. Hopefully the Kings can get another win streak started after this. Again, we expected the Kings to lose games at some point during this race. Sometimes the ones at home against teams in the standings that you're better than, they're a little more difficult to swallow. But ultimately, I don't think it's worth panicking over. I don't think it's worth freaking out about. And it's all about how the Kings answer and all about how the Kings follow things up on Monday night. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the #1 way to play daily fantasy sports, especially fantasy basketball. The way it works, you pick 2 to 5 players and you choose the over or the under on their projected scoring totals. So, for example, you can pick obviously the big name players in this game, like Anthony Edwards going over 23 points, De'Aaron Fox over or under 29.5 points. Would he keep his 30-point streak going or not? And again, you pick 2 to 5 of those players, and they even have the players like the lesser-known players or the less prominent players, like Trey Lyles coming off the bench or Malik Monk or guys like that. You pick 2 to 5 of those players. Pick whether you think it's going to be over or under. If you get it right, you could win up to 25 times your money. You're not competing against anybody else. It's just you versus the projections. They offer safe and fast withdrawals, so when you win your money, you will get your money quickly. PrizePicks, in my opinion, is the absolute best way to play daily fantasy sports and best way to enjoy that daily fantasy action, especially with the NBA. Now, if you are new to PrizePicks, we got a great deal for you. Use promo code LOCKEDON. You'll get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. So you deposit $100, you get $100 for free. You deposit $50, you get $50 for free. It's money for you to then make more money on PrizePicks, the #1 way to play daily fantasy sports. Real quick here, I want to give some love to Kessler Edwards. Now, within reason, we're not going to go over the top here. Kessler Edwards had good moments. He had certainly some questionable moments. This is someone who is an end-of-the-bench rotation guy, a defensive wing with a little bit of upside and a little bit of promise, and a low-risk, high-reward type developmental project for the Sacramento Kings. But Mike Brown simply was looking for a defensive presence that was actually going to make an impact. And Kessler Edwards came into the game, especially in the third quarter, and he made that impact guarding Anthony Davis. Hey, young man, welcome to the NBA. Welcome to the Sacramento Kings. You've played kind of spot minutes, but never really played extended minutes in an important game here in the Golden One Center. Go out there and guard the 21-year-old sensation that is Anthony Edwards. Good luck. Well, Kessler Edwards, he stepped into that matchup, and of course he didn't shut Edwards down. But Edwards had to work against Anthony Edwards had to work against Kessler Edwards. I think he stayed ready. He came in, and he did his job, which is really all you can ask out of the young man in that position. Now, he did have a moment where he helped get a stop and then tried to take it coast to coast and kind of put up a wild layup attempt that missed. I think the Kings had a chance to actually take the lead at that point when he missed that shot, which was a bummer. And I was shaking my head up in the media section going, man, come on, young man. You're just trying to do a little bit too much there. Make the smart play. But a couple of possessions later, he stayed confident. He followed that up with a in-rhythm, flow of the offense, catch-and-shoot wing three off of a feed from, I think it was De'Aaron Fox that got the assist on that play. Perfect. Exactly what you want. A defender that can space the floor and hit those open shots when they are available for him. Again, very small sample size. He has to do it consistently before he gets these consistent minutes, and this becomes his consistent role. But I love what I saw. Very happy with what I saw in the small sample size from Kessler Edwards. Now, I also need to give out a little bit of tough love. And it's for a guy that maybe you're not expecting. You know how big of a fan of Keegan Murray I am. You know how big of a supporter of Keegan Murray I am. I was very disappointed in Keegan Murray tonight. I thought Keegan Murray was the epitome of the lethargic Sacramento Kings effort tonight. Keegan Murray didn't look ready to play. I'll be completely honest with you. Keegan Murray came out here and he kind of looked like he was coasting. He did. He was unfocused, maybe disinterested. That might be a little bit harsh. We know Keegan Murray is a winner and he's very focused on winning, but tonight he just did not have it. He did not have it, and he did not look like he was ready to have it on this second night of a back-to-back. 0 points, 0 of 2 shooting from the field, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 turnover, only played 20 minutes, and those 20 minutes are telling. Doesn't matter if you're a starter. Doesn't matter if you're on your way to having the most three-pointers as a rookie in NBA history, right? None of that matters. To Mike Brown, you're going to either catch up and be ready to play, or you're going to sit down and watch. The Kings don't have time to wait for a rookie, a second-year player, any player who is not going to give the effort. Like we've seen Keegan Murray play through struggles, right? He's had bad shooting nights, but he's still trying to do the right thing. He's still trying to crash the boards, grab rebounds, helping on weak side defense. Keegan wasn't doing really much of that tonight. Now, he did some small good things. I'm not saying he was just a walking disaster out there for the Sacramento Kings, but our expectations are much higher for Keegan Murray. And again, in this race, at this point in time, the Kings need all hands on deck and everybody to be focused. And if you're not going to be that guy, you're simply not going to play. That's why he only played 20 minutes tonight. We expect way more at Keegan Murray. He needs to be way more focused and way more dialed in and way more engaged, because the rest of the Kings starters, they all delivered. The rest of the Kings starters all scored 20 points or more. Kevin Huerter had a great night tonight, 29 points. It was good to see him get going, especially from three-point range. He really carried the Kings through stretches where they looked like they were going to roll over and die, and Kevin just would not let them. He had 29 points. De'Aaron Fox had 25. Unfortunately, De'Aaron Fox's streak of 30-point games comes to an end at 8. Domantas Sabonis had 24 points, and then Harrison Barnes had 20. Keegan Murray, the fifth starter, 0 points. Didn't nearly play as much as the other four did and didn't deserve to. Meanwhile, Trey Lyles got a good bulk of minutes off the bench, and what did he do? He provided 15 points and 8 rebounds for the Sacramento Kings on a very efficient, I think it went 5 of 6 from the field, 4 of 5 from three-point range. Trey Lyles is quickly becoming one of my top 3 favorite Kings. Like, he's just so consistent and so good and so money on big shots at times. He was very, very good in the third and fourth quarters for the Sacramento Kings in this game. Keegan, if you're not going to be ready to go, you have a guy in Trey Lyles that can come off the bench and take your spot, and he can hit shots too, and he can rebound, and he can be the physical presence that the Kings need if Keegan's not really willing to be that. Now, that's an asset for Mike Brown and the Kings to have, having Trey Lyles ready to go, but Keegan is expected to be eventually the third part of the Kings' big three of De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. Now, I know he's just a rookie, not trying to be too harsh or anything like that, but he needed to be far better and far more focused in this playoff race than he was tonight. And Mike Brown, I thought, handled his playing time effectively in shortening the leash and having him sit down and watch more than he actually played. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Built Bar. If you're not familiar with Built Bar, you haven't been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast very long, which is okay. If you're new, welcome. Let me tell you about this fantastic treat. Built Bars are protein bars that are covered in 100% chocolate. They are similar to, if not perfect replacements for the candy bars and those sweet treats that you enjoy, except instead of dealing with all the calories that those treats that we shouldn't have to give up, and we shouldn't have to give up our sweet tooth if we want to eat healthy and get the protein that we need in our diet and lose weight and feel ultimately better about ourselves. We can still have the chocolate. We can still have the treats that we enjoy. Built Bar is that replacement. We're talking an average of only 130 calories per bar. We're talking 17 grams of protein, only 5 grams of sugar. Like, these bars are really, really good for you. Plus, they have their Built granola bars. They have their protein-infused marshmallow puffs for you to try. So many different flavors for you to try. I'm telling you, give them a try. Check them out. You can order your box on Built.com and kind of pick the flavors that you want. I highly recommend the mint brownie flavor. Or you can go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club, go to the pharmacy section, and you can get a box right there and give those flavors a try. Let me know what you think of Built Bars when you try them. I'm telling you, if you give Mint Brownie a try, I think you are going to like it. Built.com. I had a couple people in the comment section on last night's Locked On Kings podcast ask me to share my opinions and share my thoughts on the Ja Morant situation today. Ja Morant is currently away from the team. I think he's going to miss the next 2 or 3 games or something like that. I have no idea how long it is. The Memphis Grizzlies are just kind of going through it right now. But Ja Morant, essentially a video came out of him partying, and I guess he, on the video, he clearly flashed a gun, and I guess he brought the gun with him on a team plane or something like that. Like, Ja Morant, there's also accusations that came out recently of him, I guess, like punching a 17-year-old boy in a pickup basketball game at his house or something like that. Regardless, I don't know Ja Morant personally. I'm a fan of Ja Morant's game, of course, as many of us are here in the NBA. There's 2 ways to look at this and 2 ways to talk about this. I'll start with the one that I'm less comfortable with, which is talking about it from the Kings' perspective. On one hand, this is like, okay, take advantage of the opportunity. Yeah, Ja Morant and his crew are kind of being foolish, and the Grizzlies are having to deal with this fallout and this aftermath during a playoff race. The Kings are right behind the Memphis Grizzlies, who are in second, the Kings in third. Take advantage of this, Kings. You have a wide open window to go and potentially snatch the 2 spot. I think it's valid, of course, and it's something to monitor and something to keep an eye on. And, hey, when opportunity presents itself, whether it's because of stuff happening on the court or stuff happening off the court, you take advantage of it. So I would hope the Sacramento Kings can, with the gap being as close as it is, I think it's, 1.5 games, something like that. It might be even closer than that based off of what happens tomorrow night. The Grizzlies play tomorrow night, very shorthanded, and then what happens for the Kings on Monday night. Regardless, try and take advantage of this opportunity if you're the Sacramento Kings. Now, I'm honestly uncomfortable talking about this situation in that way because, to me, what's happening right now has nothing to do with basketball. Again, I don't know John Morant. I'm not from Memphis. I don't cover the Memphis Grizzlies, so I don't really understand the situation. I'll just give my 2 cents on this really quick before we wrap up the podcast. Based off my understanding of everything going on and my loose following of John Morant over the last year and some change, I think he's surrounding himself with the wrong people. I think his circle around him is getting him into more trouble than he's getting himself into. Now, of course, he's to blame for flashing a gun on Instagram Live or whatever the hell he was doing, and that's not good at all. But I've heard many stories and seen many players who surround themselves with entourages and people that are simply leeching off of them, leeching off of their money, and putting them in a bad situation. This stuff didn't happen for Ja until a year and a half, 2 years ago, until he started getting the fame and the Grizzlies started winning games and he started getting that money. Now, all of a sudden, John Morant is this guy flashing a gun persona and party guy persona who's not afraid to fight anybody, and it just doesn't seem authentic. I don't know. I don't believe it's who John Morant is. Again, I've only ever had one conversation with John Morant, and by that I mean I asked him a question in a presser scrum. I don't know anything about John Morant. This maybe is who he is, but we haven't seen it until the last year or some change. So my opinion on the situation is I hope Ja can take some time, figure out what he needs to do. I think he got off of Instagram or just deactivated his Instagram and Twitter accounts and things like that, and maybe that's the right first step. But I think John needs to reevaluate who he's surrounding himself with and what he's doing and how that is hindering his career, how that's hindering his reputation, could hinder his deal with Nike. Like, there are some problems that he has to figure out. And I care more about that because I like John Morant. I'm infatuated by John Morant. I think John Morant is really, really good for the league and really exciting and really fun to watch. I care more about that than I care about the Kings closing this gap. But again, if the Kings take advantage of this opportunity, like I hope they will, hey, can't blame the Sacramento Kings for taking the hand that's dealt to them and doing the best that they absolutely can. So we'll see what happens with this John Morant situation. Of course, we'll see what happens with the Sacramento Kings starting on Monday and next week. Thank you to everybody who not only continues to tune into the Locked On Kings podcast, but I talked to a few of you who were here at the arena tonight. The environment was great. You know who you are. Thank you so much for saying hi. I really appreciate it. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of the Locked On Kings podcast. Hopefully we're back to winning and we're back to positivity. Leave your thoughts on this game. Leave your thoughts on the John Morant situation if you want, Keegan Murray, De'Aaron Fox, whatever you want to talk about. You can send those to me at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. But for right now, we are done. From the Golden One Center, my name is Matt George. You are listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.